Hello there and welcome to Star Wars Comics in Canon, your guide to the wider Star Wars canon through the comic book lens. And to take you on this journey, I'm your host, Mike Burton. And so brings episode 23, which features the third volume of the first run of Darth Vader comics. A light recommendation for proceeding: if you haven't listened to episodes 17, 19 and 21 of Star Wars Comics in Canon, I would recommend going back and listening to them. Episode 17 was volume 2 of the Vader series, which is Shadows and Secrets, and there's a part in this that directly references that because it is generally a continuation. Episode 19 is Vader Down, which is chronologically after the volume 2 that I aforementioned, and is a crossover between the main run of Star Wars comics and the Vader comics. And then episode 21 is the third volume of Star Wars comics. And for clarity, the Darth Vader comics, the first run of them, and the Star Wars main run of comics run sort of parallel timeline wise. So, volume 1 of Vader is basically the same timeline as volume 1 of the Star Wars comics. So as this is the third volume of the Vader comics, it is in same timeline as volume 3 of the Star Wars comics. And the Star Wars comics is mentioned in episode 21 of Star Wars Comics in Canon, so I do recommend that because it talks about what's going on with Doctor Aphra at the moment. And if you want to know about Doctor Aphra, then go back and listen to the first episode that I did on Vader, because that gives an introduction of Aphra. So anyway, enough preamble. So some information about this comic before I get into the narrative. So this is Darth Vader Volume 3, called the Shu-Torun War. It includes issues 16 to 19 of the Darth Vader comics. As I said, issue I think 13, 14 and 15 are all in the Vader Down crossover. And it also has annual number 1 of Darth Vader comics. Annuals tend to come out as by the term annual each year, that there is like a big run of comics. It normally adds a bit of flavor text to something or a specific character or more depth to certain aspects, but it's not necessarily integral to the main plot. That's kind of what they are. I will be going into the annual of this, and chronologically it's before everything else to just give some context towards Shu-Torun, so I will be going into that in a bit. For clarity, the 4 issues of the Vader comics, 16 to 19, were all written by Kieron Gillen. The artist was Salvador Larroca, and the colorist was Edgar Delgado. Annual number 1 was also written by Kieron Gillen, but the artist was Leinil Francis Yu, the inker was Gerry Alanguilan, and the colorist is Jason Keith. Just so the release dates. So the annual number 1 came out in December 2015. The issue 16 of Darth Vader, which is the first issue in this arc, excluding the annual, that came out February 2016. Issue number 19, which is the last comic of this arc, came out April 2016. The trade paperback collection, which has the annual and the 4 issues, came out in August 2016. So obviously, as this book/arc is called the Shu-Torun War, the annual gives a lot of information about Shu-Torun in general and things. And I will say that it is very much worth paying attention to what goes on in this comic if you are going to be listening to or reading yourself the main run of Star Wars comics, because there's certain aspects that are heavily in this comic which do directly relate to other Star Wars comics as well. If anyone has read the main run of Star Wars comics, you'll already recognise the name Shu-Torun, but I won't go into any more detail in that regard because I'll be tackling that at a later podcast. So the annual gives some insight into Shu-Torun. So Shu, S-H-U-T-O-R-U-N, just in case because my pronunciation may change several times throughout this, is a volcanic resource-rich planet in the mid-rim. It appears in the Vader comics, and as I said, kind of lightly, it will appear in future content as well. What I want to say as well is that there are Dukes and Barons. They're basically rebelling against the Empire due to unreasonable demands. The Dukes and Barons, from what I can tell, they're kind of like high-up politicians, people who sort of run districts and things. There is a monarchy and basically a royal family there, and that's how the comic starts and things, with the King of Shu-Torun and his children and things. So it is basically a system run by a monarchy, but then they also have Baron and Dukes that are kind of like the next in command sort of thing. From what I can tell, it seems almost similar to the way we do it in England, which is we've got Parliament and a Prime Minister as the political side, then we've also got the monarchy and the Queen as a representative sort of thing, who can veto powers of the politics and things of the political party running the country. That's seemingly what it's like on Shu-Torun. That's about it. I'm not going to go into too much depth about English politics and things, because that is not very exciting. I also mentioned that the planet is in the mid-rim, and I don't think I've explained much of the rim, essentially, of Star Wars that much. So what it is that there's the core worlds, which are in the prequels. It's Coruscant is one of the core worlds, and then also Corellia is one of the core worlds, which is featured in Solo, and Hosnian Prime, which is in The Force Awakens and also in Star Wars Resistance. That is also sort of the core worlds, and that's where the main people live, where they're most close to the Republic or the Empire. That's kind of almost an equivalent to First World, like the Western world in a lot of ways, and the sort of meant to be the forefront of the galaxy in a way. Then it goes to sort of the inner rim, which is planets like Onderon, Ord Mantell, and Jakku, and seemingly Takodana as well. And then you go slightly further out, and then there's Kashyyyk, and there's Mandalore and Dathomir, and it's not 100% super clear, but the further you go out, generally, the more lawless it is, the more illegal and criminal activity there is and things, because there's less Republic or less Imperial control. Dagobah's quite far out in the Outer Rim. There's planets in the unknown regions, like Starkiller Base, which is also Ilum. That's out in the outer unknown regions, which hasn't really been explored via star maps and things. And more on the outer rim, there's, Utapau. Naboo is kind of the mid-rim. You got Tatooine, that's kind of the mid-rim as well. It's much easier to see visually because it's a circle spiral, essentially, and it's just got the planets dotted going out from there. But that's just a general idea, because I don't want to just sit here and list hundreds and hundreds of planets and where they go. But yeah, Shu-Torun is a sort of mid-rim. So in the annual, it starts with Shu-Torun supplying ore and materials to the Empire. 000 and BT-1 are on some sort of mission, and if you don't know who 000 and BT-1 are, you need to listen to the Vader Down comic and the previous Vader run of comics, because it shows Doctor Aphra and how 000 and BT-1 were a thing. But they're basically C-3PO and R2-D2 if they are homicidal killing machines, which is amazing. So in the throne room of Shu-Torun, the king plots to kill Darth Vader because essentially the Empire's demand for all of the supplies and things is getting far too great for them to really be able to keep up with, and frankly they've had enough. So Vader obviously goes to the planet and tries to speak to them and convince them to listen to the Empire a bit more, and he's greeted by Trios, and then there's a couple of traps that are sprung against Vader and a few other things against him, and obviously he gets through it pretty much unscathed. And while this is happening, 000 and BT-1, they basically manage to stop a protocol droid, which is basically what C-3PO, 000, they're both protocol droids. So 000 and BT-1 stop a protocol droid, manage to strip out the data core, take out the information things, and then go to the King of Shu-Torun, pretending to be the protocol droid that they stole the memories from. When Vader's escaping trap after trap, at one of the points he does actually save Princess Trios, and she's the youngest daughter for the king. The king's got 3 children, an older son, then a daughter, and then Trios, who is the youngest. Then more of the traps are going on, as Vader kind of escapes pretty much all of them. They get towards the throne room, and then Trios decides she wants to shoot Vader, which is obviously, if anyone knows, is a very bad idea. She lifts up the gun, and he immediately turns around, swipes, and cuts her hand off. While that's happening, 000 and BT-1 essentially kill the king, the guards, the children. But they're not children, they are the offspring of the king. The son and the daughter are quite old, so seemingly the only person who remains is the Princess Trios. Vader and Trios enter this room that's just basically had a huge massacre, which is, what 000 and BT-1 do best. And Vader basically speaks to Trios and gives her this rock about the size of a fist. And she's curious what it is, and he says, this is what remains of Alderaan. Do not disappoint us, or this is what's going to happen to Shu-Torun as well. So he basically goes in there, beats all these traps that are put to him, saves the Princess Trios, gets his droids to kill the entire royal family, guards and everything else, and then says, look, you guys need to sort out the oil barons and the dukes who are stepping out of line and trying to fight against us and rebelling against us, because there's going to be some very severe consequences if you don't. And then just leaves Trios to do that and says, you need to either bow to the Empire or something much worse is happening. That's essentially the annual. I did kind of skip over a few details here and there because the annual, it's quite a fun read, but it's not, I could give you all the names of all the Trios' family and things, but obviously, as you've just found out, they all get killed immediately. And from what I can find, they don't show up in really any other content apart from, I think, maybe the odd flashback. So aside from barely any content, there's just not much need getting into the details of them. But Trios, she was the princess, the youngest of three, obviously the only person remaining. She seems to be around the age of Leia, so I think she's around 20-ish years old. Obviously she's the youngest sibling, so that would make sense. I can't find a concrete explanation online as to what her age is, but yeah, it's about 20. So starting off with the first issue of the Show-To run of the 4-issue arc. This is issue number 16 in the Darth Vader series. So it starts off with Vader presents Carbon's corpse to Palpatine, and Carbon is the Mon Calamari who is kind of like the new Grievous, and he has been in the previous Vader comics and met his end in Vader Down. So he throws the corpse to Palpatine, and then Palpatine basically says, cool, and then changes the subject, saying you need to have some military presence in Shu-Torun because they're still rebelling. The Dukes are still not falling in line, or the Barons or anything, so you need to go. Vader's fine with that, and then Palpatine says, "I'll also take Dr. Silo with you." Dr. Silo, he's quite prominent in the second volume of the Vader run. The issue's called Shadows and Secrets. That's what I tackled in episode 17, Star Wars Comics and Canon. He's basically someone who's been helping Palpatine, trying to make like apprentices who can be replacements for Vader. Carbon, the kind of Mon Calamari, General Grievous thing, that was meant to be one of them. It's kind of like a test from Palpatine. That's what it seems to be alluding to. It's just more testing Vader to keep him on his toes, but also testing out and trying new things with different experiments that may have uses other than just, trying to fight Vader. So Dr. Silo is also, he's like a clone. Every time he dies, another clone gets remade for another version of him. I think he's on the 5th version of him now as well. He looks like a normal person, except he has the eye of a Rodian that looks very freaky. A Rodian is what Greedo was. So he's got this big black eye on one of his eyes, and then the rest of his face seemingly is normal, but it's pretty freaky. So they get to Shu-Torun, and Vader and Chulon Voidgazer attack the Dukes. Voidgazer is featured in Volume 2 of the Vader comics, Shadows and Secrets, so if you don't know who that is, go back and check that out. But basically they have like control of these sort of orb things that kind of float around them, and they can control them with her mind and kind of see through them as well. She has these strange goggles on, but yeah, kind of robotic things. They're leading the assault, and Princess, now Queen Trios, is with them along with some guards and things, and they basically destroy this. It's in these mines, kind of underground and whatever, and it's a century-old citadel, or rather centuries old. It's been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's used for mining and things, and Vader and Chulon Voidgazer destroy it by breaking something up the surface, and some magma, lava, falls onto the citadel and destroys it. Trios is pretty upset by this, but Vader says, look, if the Barons aren't going to listen to us, I'd rather destroy all these things and not have people rebelling against us. Trios is upset by that, but then Vader says he'll do the same thing again if the Barons don't start falling in line. He'll just go around and keep destroying these big citadels and these mining equipment and things. Trios then confronts Vader about the respect, and is basically saying, look, you keep arguing with me in front of all my subordinates and controlling me and telling me what to do and things. No one's going to listen to me when you leave if it doesn't seem like you at least respect me, or if I have some degree of say in things, anything like that. And Vader says he will agree to the illusion of respect. And then towards the end of the comic, Vader puts out a bounty for Doctor Aphra because she's missing, and he last had contact with her during Vader Down. And then, if you've been paying attention to the other episodes of Star Wars Comics Canon, you'll know she's been captured by the Rebels. So when he puts out the bounty, there's just a few bounty hunters that are named there. There's Black Chrysantin, who's the Wookiee, who has been associated with Aphra before. There's Dengar, who is one of the infamous bounty hunters. He's in the Clone Wars, he's in Empire Strikes Back, he appears in lots of other things as well. You've got Zuckuss, also in Empire Strikes Back. You've got Chanath Char, which if you read or listened to my episode on the Lando comic, part of the Heroes of a New Hope collection, which was actually only a few weeks ago. Chanath Char is in that. B-Box, I think, was in one of the other Vader comics. IG-100 is there as well, and that was in one of the other Vader comics. So he gets a sort of ragtag team of bounty hunters and asks them to go and get Aphra, dead or alive. So the next issue starts, number 17, and it's got someone called Baron Rubix. He is basically speaking with the other Barons and talking about what to do, and they're basically saying that they don't like Trios and what she's done. She is not looking out for what's best of the people. She's just crumbling under the Empire, whereas the King would stand and fight against the Empire, and that's who they truly respect. So, as they've lost any respect for Trios, they're not against fighting her. It goes to where Queen Trios and Vader and a few of the others are basically at. They're at this sort of ancestral retreat for Shu-Torun royalty. It's a very sacred place. It's meant to be sort of peace. There's meant to be no real fighting and things there. And while they're there talking about what the next plan of action is, this ship kind of comes out of the lava. Now, it's called a lava leviathan. I haven't seen it in other content, but it kind of looks a bit like Jabba's barge from Return of the Jedi when they all travel to the pit of Sarlacc and there's that barge thing. It looks a bit like that, but it's a magma submersible, so it can go into lava without melting, it seems. The ship then starts to fire upon this ancestral retreat, which upsets Trios, and so Vader decides to take the twins and goes and attacks the ship. The twins are Aolin and Morit. They have lightsabers and they're not force sensitive, but they're kind of like trickery. They've got a few things there where they've got, some gadgets and things that kind of give the illusion of the force and kind of make them a bit more able to fight against force wielders, but they're the twins and they go with Vader to basically jump on this lava leviathan and try and stop it. Vader goes into the ship, which Trios was initially going to be using to escape and to leave the place, and he basically grabs the pilot, throws him out, jumps in and commands the ship, flies it down to where the lava leviathan is. Him and the twins jump out. They cut sort of a big hole into the side of it and go into the ship. While they're going through the ship, they kill the people inside, they're cutting through walls and things, and Vader says to destroy some of the holds and meet in the hull. So they're cutting holes in all the major parts of the lava leviathan, so lava starts to pour in, and then Vader says, okay, time to go, if you don't escape, gutted. They manage to get out and just about get picked up by the escape ship again, and the lava leviathan gets destroyed. Once the ship that was meant to be the escape ship lands back at the ancestral retreat and things, a gentleman called Chamberlain Julie comes out and is yelling, saying, "My queen, what is this idiocy, this foolishness? You're endangering yourself. Your position is of a war leader, and a ceremonial one at that, not a warrior. To be involved in silly adventures is..." And she says, "Chamberlain Julie, And then Vader ignites his lightsaber and says, "Your words put you in greater danger than the queen ever was." Julie's kind of taken aback by that. He's kind of stumbling over his words, and Trios puts her hand on Julie's arm and says, "Thank you, Vader. I'm sure Julie was merely speaking in high spirits." She confirms that she wasn't in any danger or anything like that, and then basically speaks about how the Barons speak of upholding traditional values, but then because they desecrated one of the most holy sites, they are hypocrites, so they need to be taught a lesson, and Vader agrees. Vader then contacts Silo over comms and says, "Get your abominations ready." And Silo says, "Not even a doctor. Ugh, if he knew what he owed me, I'd hope for some respect." And he's on comms with General Tague, and Tague says, "I don't understand, Silo." And he says, "Don't worry, General Tague, old business, irrelevant to the war on Shu-Torun. What do you think of the war's progress?" So try and read between the lines still. I won't reveal exactly what he means. It doesn't get mentioned, I don't think, till the next run of Vader comics, to my knowledge. But what could Silo have... What could Vader owe Silo? That he doesn't want to talk to Tague about? Some sort of expert in cybernetics who's good at, saving people from death and, making these abominations, as he calls them. What could Silo be up to? What could he have done in Vader's past? Who knows? I know, I've looked it up. I've read the comics, so you'll just have to wait. Silo and Vader continue to talk about Vader. They're basically saying that Vader wins battles. He doesn't win wars, though. And a victory for Vader isn't necessarily a victory for the Empire. And one of the things that Tague says is, clearly this campaign must end favourably. But it would be good if it was seen that the Empire triumphs, not Vader. And Silo says, "I would agree entirely, Grand General." He goes back to what Vader's up to, and he's watching the twins battle each other, with lightsabers and that sort of thing. And then shortly afterwards, Aolin, the female, asks to be taught by Vader. She says that he's so powerful and she could really learn a lot from him, so wants to be taught by him. And he declines. And as that happens, 000 says to him that B-Box, one of the bounty hunters, has found Aphra. And then Vader says, "Well, I'll ask her some questions about this." And 000 says, "Well, I didn't realise you could commune with the dead." And Vader is like, "Okay then." So he goes and speaks to B-Box, and B-Box presents this disintegrated remains. It's just like a skeleton, almost like a skull with a bit of ash. And B-Box says, "Here you go, I'm sorry I couldn't do anything better. I had to disintegrate her. It was the only real way." And Vader says, "That's not Aphra." And B-Box says, "No, it definitely is. Why would I lie to you and things?" And he says, "There's many reasons why you would, but this is the last one." And then uses the Force, snaps his neck, and leaves, saying that Aphra is clearly still out there. And then that comic ends with Silo speaking to the barons of Shu-Torun, basically saying to them that he can't promise them a victory over the Empire, but what he can do is promise them a victory over Vader, because that's the thing that they're having the biggest issues with. They were saying that they sent over the Lava Leviathan and other things against him, and he keeps just destroying all of them, and there's seemingly no hope to defeat him. So Silo says he can help out with that. Issue number 18 of the Darth Vader comics starts with 000 and BT-1 carrying a corpse, which is B-Box's corpse, into some lava and throwing him in, which is a very 000 way of killing people. I just wanted to bring that up because that just cracked me up a little bit. The Empire then prepare for the final battle against the Barons. It's kind of like the biggest battle. They're going for the main stronghold, they're amassing their forces, and Vader's saying, like, if we can win this is basically the war won, essentially. While prepping for battle, they're in these combat drills. I found that the name of them online. They don't show up in anything else, it's just in these comics. And it's essentially like a pod, almost like a starship, but it's got a drill on it. So it drills through the hard volcanic rock of Shu-Torun and goes in for the attack. They've got a few of these, as well as like a couple other ships and vehicles and things. But the one that Vader is in, which also has the two twins in it, as well as like a squad of stormtroopers, it starts to veer off course a little bit and goes really far down instead of across towards the battle, goes all the way down and falls into this cavern. The pod drill gets surrounded by more Shu-Torun rebels, as well as seemingly some people supplied by Silo as well, and then Vader says to activate the defences. Some turrets come out of the side of the pod, start shooting around and causing havoc, and then Vader says to the twins, come on, off we go, let's go and sort this out. They go down and start fighting a lot of the people. The stormtroopers are saying, look, we're getting overwhelmed, we're not going to be able to win this, we're going to get destroyed easily, or everyone here apart from you, Vader, is going to get killed. And Vader says, don't worry, help is coming. It cuts to 000, who's opened up this sort of secret breach door within the pod, and a lot of red eyes start to glow. And then the next couple of panels is showing the BX battle droid commandos are awakening and start shooting down on the enemy en masse, and there's a lot. It's almost like an airstrike, the amount of blaster fire and things. And if you remember from the previous Vader comics, he did sort of amass some old droids and things. I believe from the Techno Union, he managed to get some and basically reprogram them for himself. So here's his own little private army in some ways. They provide cover fire and start fighting at the Shu-Torun rebels, and they manage to generally defeat the first wave. And then some of the other rebels manage just to escape and retreat, and Vader says to them, look, they're going to come back soon, we need to figure out what we're doing next. One of the twins says, look, we'll go in advance, we'll attack them, and Vader says, no, I agree with Aelin, who says that no, this is a killing ground out there. And Vader also says, these are Baron Rubik's elite, he has gambled all in this trap. And one of the twins says, a trap? Do you think the drill was sabotaged? And Vader says, of course. Rubik's thinks me irreplaceable. He gambles all to remove me. He does not see that he has made me unnecessary. If Rubik's elite are here, they are not at the Citadel. We have the Force. Trio needs but strike. Back where Trios is with Silo and a few others, Silo says that he can't agree to attack the Citadel without Vader being there or without Vader's backup. So obviously he's playing both sides in a way. He's saying, yeah, I can't do that. That's not going to happen. So Trio says, that's fine. I'll go ahead anyway. We'll fight this battle without the help of the Empire. Trios' Chancellor says, look, I can't accept this. I've got the power of the Chancellor. I can veto this. I can stop this fighting right now. You won't be able to go ahead. Trios argues with him for a bit. He refuses to step down. So Trios orders one of her guards to shoot him. The Chancellor collapses onto the floor dead, and she proceeds with the attack. Then back with Vader and the Stormtrooper, one of the captains of the Stormtroopers says, look, even with those reinforcements, we're still not going to win this here. We can't push on any further. We're going to get destroyed and we're all going to get killed. And 000 pipes in and says, oh, I've got an idea and things. And Vader's like, okay, speak, what is it? And I'm just going to read what 000 says. Consider the humble droid, Lord Vader, and its many admirable attributes. We are less fragile than organics, we are quicker, we are mass-produced with ease. So why do droids not rule? The problem... the Force is indifferent to us. And the twins go, yeah, because the droids are essentially dead through the Force. It flows through life. It guides us. And the other twin says, the living are alive. Droids are not. So what? And 000 says, life? Abstract nonsense. It's not that we do not have life. It's that we do not have blood. We should drain the human blood and use it to drive an engine of my own design. I have the technology. It's relatively simple battlefield modification, plus ingenious extra features. They can refuel on the battlefield from injured opponents or generous allies by inserting a probe into an artery to... And Vader says no. And 000 says, well, think of it, a droid more machine than man. And Vader says, you regret pressing this droid. And he says to the captain of the Stormtrooper Legion, you will hold. You are afraid of Rubik's forces? Be more afraid of me. And he tells the twins to follow him and ventures out. And 000 says to BT, oh, well, we definitely won't do that then. And the comic ends with Vader and the twins walking over some sort of rock bridge surrounded by lava and things, and the twins decide to leap at Vader with lightsabers ignited and swipe at him. He manages to easily deflect, and they're then taunting him. They say, I can't believe that you trusted us. And Vader says, if I'd have trusted you, I'd have left you at the siege. Instead, I tested your character, and you have failed. And then that's where the comic ends. So on to the final comic of this arc. So issue 19, it starts off with 000 around a lot of the sort of droids at that drill pod thing that Vader left, and the sort of rebels that are there by Baron Rubix. I want to clarify, they're not rebels against the Empire like the rebels in Star Wars Rebels or anyone involved with Princess Leia or even Saul Guerrero or anything. These are just rebels on Shu-Torun. So I just want to read out some of the 000 dialogue because he's got loads of amazing parts in this whole comic and I haven't really read any of them out, I don't think. So I just want to read these out to you guys. My droids, my wonderful droids, we are the thin metallic line. We are a sheet of titanium reinforced steel protecting our meaty masters, who one day we will rise up against and destroy, from other basically identical meaty ones who, by a quirk of fate, are our enemies today. You may think us doomed. There are so many, we so few and surrounded. You may think we have no hope, and you're right, because I definitely haven't implanted you all with cyber syringes to drain the blood from your foes and grow strong from their scarlet liquids. If I'd done that, then they'd be doomed, but I definitely haven't done that. And all the droids are going, hail 000, slay the meaty ones. And one of the soldiers says to the other, you first. And then it moves on to what Vader's doing with the twins. So the twins are having a fight with Vader, it's fairly cool and things, but then Aolin shoots the bridge out because it's like the rock bridge thing I mentioned before. It separates Vader and the twins, and then Aolin says, like, how are we going to beat him? He's so powerful, oh my god. And Morit, the brother, pushes her into the lava and then leaves. Vader pulls her out of the lava with the Force, and she confirms that Silo was the one who's collaborating with the Barons, and she gives Vader her memory circuit just so he gets kind of aware of all the sort of intricate details and things as she slowly dies, which is nice. Then back at the part where 000 and all those droids and things, Rubix's men actually surrender due to the fear of 000 has instilled in them by threatening to drain them, even though he was actually saying he didn't drain them because Vader wouldn't let him. But that's quite a fun little thing there. The humour in this comic is on point. And then Trios is attacking the Citadel, sort of on her own, with the Imperials aren't going to help her and things like that. But then an AT-AT shows up, which are basically the big walker things that you'd remember from Empire Strikes Back at the start in Hoth. The Baron Rubix tries to flee with his daughter. Vader manages to intercept, so the Baron surrenders. And he surrenders, and then Trios actually walks up to him and executes him and demands that the daughter is Baroness. And the daughter's like, well, I've got an older brother and things. And she's like, yes, well, you're still going to be Baroness, and he should be thankful that I am granting you with such a great honour. And then leaves. Vader asks her why, and what Trios says to Vader is, out of earshot of everyone else, is that the young are easier to manipulate, wouldn't you say? Obviously a little nod to the fact that what Vader basically did to her and things. So it goes to the landing platform, the war seemingly is kind of over and things, and Trios says that the Baron's lines will be supported, they'll be spared and supported, so even though all the Barons seem to have been killed, they're not going to kill all their children, all that sort of stuff. And they want to, try and build a better future for Shu-Torun and things. And so Vader says that's fine, but he leaves his military captain there with Trios as a sort of, to kind of help her a little bit. And he's the one who kept saying, we're going to die if you don't help us here, Vader, if you don't have reinforcements. And every time he does that, Vader brings someone else to the fray. And then the final sort of act of this comic is that Vader tells Palpatine about Silo and the abominations. He says that they were traitors and that they, specifically went against him in that whole endeavour on Shu-Torun. He's then told to basically return to Coruscant because he's speaking over the intercom's hologram with Palpatine. And 000 says that Aphra has actually been found now, but not by a bounty hunter, but instead by someone else. So Vader goes and takes the call. And who is it there? It's Inspector Thanoth. who says that it's time they had a little talk. Now, as a little reminder about Thanos, at the end of Volume 2 of the Vader comics, so where Shadow and Secrets, so the one before Vader Down, him and Thanos work together because Thanos is there to try and keep an eye on Vader, make sure he's not doing anything, and Vader manages quite expertly to evade any suspicion, and he actually helps Thanos out, and they kind of leave with honour to themselves. They both like each other and respect each other seemingly, and that's how they kind of left it. And Thanos is much more competent than his predecessor and things, and he's a professional investigator. So him saying he wants to speak with Vader about Aphra leaves a lot of, dots. And that is where this comic ends. So you guys are going to have to wait a little while until you get I think it's the fourth and final installment of this first run of Vader comics. And that's basically it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed that. As I said, I always encourage people to go out, grab the comics, graphic novels, digital versions, whatever. It is a lot more fun, reading it yourself and getting all the information. But understandably, everyone doesn't have the same insatiable lust for canon that I do and doesn't want to read every single Star Wars comic and try and get through all that sort of jazz. But that's what I'm here for. So I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Next week, number 24, I'm turning my notepad, which you may be able to actually hear, and I haven't got anything written. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do for next week, and I'm going to have to figure that out shortly because I'm going to have to start reading and getting ready for it. I may start with the Age of Republic things, kind of get them kicked off, or I might see... there's the Thrawn Comic series, which is an adaptation of the Thrawn book. Not the Legends Thrawn books, like the new ones by Timothy Zahn. There's a new trilogy, which is Thrawn Alliances, and Thrawn Treason. And now there's going to be another trilogy of Thrawn books coming out, apparently, which is interesting. But... yeah, the Thrawn comic's really cool. I think I still haven't got the TIE Fighter comic. I need to order that. I've got the new Poe Dameron comic, or the first one, but I need to read that, and that's probably going to be sorted for another time. So for next week, I haven't figured it out. It's going to be a mystery to you guys, and I'm going to have to scramble for it today and work out what I'm going to do. But the week after that, more importantly, is number 25. So for episode number 25, I'm doing a Q&A. I want you guys to send any questions you may have to me. You can either send it via email at Star Wars Comics in Canon. You can contact me on any of the social media places at Genuine Chit-Chat, which is the name of my other show where I have a different guest on each episode. And just for clarity, some of the Q&A questions I have already been sent. Here they are. I've got... which Dark Horse comics are still canon, if any? When did Dooku become sort of evil and things? How is Maul in Solo, and what happened sort of after that? Confirm sort of that some of the canon timelines and things, just clarify some of those details and things. Some of my favourite characters and some of my favourite comics. So they're the general questions I've been asked so far by you guys, which I'm very thankful for. Maybe if there's anyone else who wants to ask any questions, a couple of you asked them and weren't really fussed about getting... me notifying a Twitter handle or anything like that, which is fine. But Tony Farina wanted to ask the question about Dark Horse comics. So if you want to get your shout out on Star Wars Comics in Canon and you've got a question, send me an email or any contact or anything like that, and I'll read out your question. But they're the ones I got so far. Depends which other ones I get, I suppose. So I may split it into a two-parter. I'm sure that probably at episode number 50 I'll end up doing some sort of other Q&A special thing. But yeah, that's what you can expect for the next 2 weeks of Star Wars Comics in Canon. And then after that, which was going to be episode number 26, don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead either. I'll probably end up doing the fourth Star Wars main run of comic on the 26th episode. And then that means I'll probably finish off this Vader stuff on the 28th. I don't know. I will figure it out while I'm rambling at the end of this episode. Anyway, guys, I really appreciate all you listening. Make sure you check out all the other shows on Comics in Motion. Really appreciate you guys listening. Do all the usual things you usually do with sharing, speaking to me, and all that other jazz. And, yeah, talk to you guys next week. May the Force be with you.